here we are. We're at number 10 Windsor Road. This is where I started to write my story. I found myself in a wheelchair for 9 weeks, and my neighbour Dawn Garisch runs these amazing memoir writing workshops. I didn't know at the time, but she said to me, start writing, I'm taking you to a memoir writing workshop in 3 weeks' time. I'm taking you in your wheelchair every day. And that's what I did. I had my table and my candle every morning, and I started writing my story. And most of it was written here, in this house. So much fun.
You never know what's going to happen next.
We don't.
No?
We don't. I mean, it's 10 years ago, Dawn, we were sitting around,
10 years.
having a memoir support group, because all of us had been through workshops with you and were writing our first little chapters and things and coming together to listen. 2013.
And now you have this incredible project. You put it together over 10 years. And we'll talk about the process, but you've got something that is a manuscript, it's a text, audiobook, and the music, and the visuals, and now you're going to have a video.
That's wonderful.
Really multidisciplinary, it's really amazing.
It's multidisciplinary and multimedia.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite exciting, because I didn't know I was writing a book. I didn't
Fell into it, literally.
Literally fell into it, yes.
In the street that we live
In
in.
the street, yes. I remember it was in 2013, and I was coming home on a Sunday night late, and I was walking up this, and I had a rough encounter. There was somebody behind me, and I crossed over trying to avoid the person going up, and I was holding onto my bag because I was supposed to be leaving for Europe 2 days later, and I was spinning around, hanging on, and I fell off that curb and obviously damaged something. And I also concussed myself because I looked up and there was this magnificent sky of stars. And then somebody, an architect, was working late in his studio, and he came out, put me in his car, reversed me up to the top of Windsor Road, where some of my lovely neighbours came out and sorted it all out, got me into an ambulance, and I'd only been here a couple of weeks. I hadn't even known anybody yet. How amazing was that? Yes. And you came across in your doctor hat.
Yes, yes.
And said, Marilyn, if you're going to be in a wheelchair for 9 weeks, start writing. And I'm going to take you to a workshop. And 3 weeks later, you picked me up every morning with my wheelchair and took me to that workshop. That was the start.
That was the start.
It was the start. And because I had 9 weeks, I did a lot of writing.
So, Marilyn, did you think that you were going to write about your whole life at that point? Or how did you conceive it in the beginning?
In the beginning, I don't know. I didn't think I was going to write about my whole life. I started writing for myself. Interestingly, I came across 2 pages just a couple of weeks ago when I was completing this project, and I needed to put something on the website saying about these memoirs. And these 2 pages start off with 2013, Kalk Bay. I have started to write my memoirs. And in those 2 pages, I say what I think is going to be written. And I say, I'm not going to write about my professional life, except I am quite amazed at where it's taken me.
Of course.
And I thought, and I said, that my memoirs are going to definitely be about music and exploring that thread that kind of links through the music.
Well, through the words, you
Yes.
explore music and relationship and spirituality, and your work does come into it a little bit. Maybe not
Yes.
enough. I'm still curious to find out more about the work that you did. But that those plats that you weave together or plait together make such a strong story, all three of them. And I'm just wondering how you see them as sort of parallel aspects of your life and how they fed into each other. The music, the writing, the travel, the spirituality, all the curiosity you brought to all those aspects of your life.
Right at the beginning, I wasn't clear about the shape of it. You know, I knew, and I think I've heard this phrase from you. You know, the scenes that spring up to be written, and that's what I was getting every morning when I sat down to write. There would be a series of little scenes, and not necessarily finding a thread connecting them all, except later on I did find that yes, there was a thread linking them all, and often it was music or the experience of an event that had some kind of musical memoir associated with it. Now, I'm not really probably answering that question very well because I was awed by the stories that I was getting about my life. Sometimes I was surprised.
So you first wrote the whole memoir, to my knowledge, and then what happened? How did it become this incredible flowering, blossoming thing that went off in all directions? But it's become a much bigger. It's like a bouquet. That's what I want to say. So it's not only an e-book. It's a whole experience.
I think that was very interesting because I had written, you know, these texts, these chapters, whatever we called them, little scenes, and for some years, they just sat somewhere until we were in lockdown, and we were kind of given this time to reflect on things in our lives. And I was in Stanford. I happened to be here when we got locked down, and I looked around and I found piles of texts, and I read through them, and I thought, oh, this might be interesting. What shall I do with it? And then one or two people read what I had, which was the 3 parts at that stage, 3 parts of what I've now produced. And they said they were sufficiently encouraging, you know, and one of them said, you need to write part 4 because you've actually, 10 years has gone since you completed that. So I did write that, part 4, and then I thought, but to edit it into a book would be a very big thing for me. Little March, an early musical memoir. Can someone please play us a march? My hand shot up. I can. I was 9 years old and had been learning my first piece of piano music. Written clearly at the top of the single sheet was Little March. I had it mastered, memorized, and could therefore play a march. My response was accurate. The request was for a pianist for morning. And my first attempts were quite interesting. I had a duvet that I pinned on the rafters and created my own little sound studio. You know, had a little bit of backing. Not bad for the first 30 episodes. And then, even during that time, then I started working with my iPhone. And I found that actually it wasn't that much worse using just the iPhone. So I recorded them into the app that you have on an iPhone, just that.
Very creative.
Very creative. And and then I was very proud of myself because I spent a lot of time uploading from my little audio recordings. I put them onto SoundCloud. And then with time, there were 70 of them, so I was getting a bit confused. I created playlists for each part. There's a playlist. And now, on this website, you can do several things. You can either listen to the whole story as an audio book, which will pick up every so often with a piece of music that has been inserted. You can read the text, because that's all been finally edited. So the manuscript is there as a whole book. And there are videos, little videos, archival type videos that were done. They've got a slight kind of fuzziness to them, very atmospheric. But they're there, you know, one or two little memories.
I want to ask you 10 things at the same time.
Yes.
One of them is that, just to say that your memoir is very conversational. I mean, it's very easy on the air, you've got a lovely voice, and it just comes across really well. It comes across like it just came out in a long string and it just worked all together. It doesn't sound edited and curated and into a small little tight ball. It's got a kind of flow, as the music does, to my ear, and I'm just wondering about that overlap between writing and music, and whether you find that there's some way in which they are similar or in which it's different, the download of the writing and the download of the music, or however you want to phrase it.
So interesting that. I think I would say that with the music, I'm sure there is an overlay, because of that creative space that one is in at the moment of receiving the creative message, whatever it is. But with music, I'm very conscious of being an instrument. Yeah. I am aware of that. When I sit down and I wait for the music, I don't even have to wait, but connect. And I know the music will come. And I know I'm an instrument.
Beautiful.
With writing, I don't know that. I mean, okay, I can hold my pencil and I haven't got that certainty that there'll be a download of poetry or wonderful words. Not that I write poetry, but with music, I know the music's there and I'm an instrument.
Yes. You've had a musical life from when you were young, but it changed radically when you were an adult. Could you say more about that?
Yes, I can. I had, you know, normal kind of tuition of music that you have at school. So I'd got to maybe standard 9 and I didn't have music as a subject, so I had to decide that I wasn't going to carry on with it. But I had got technically, you know, up to grade 8 or something. But theoretically, only grade 5 or something. So that slipped off my priority list. And then I started architecture and I was very young and shy. At 17, you know, with all these people who were a little older and more confident and so on. So I certainly didn't put myself forward to play any music. I was battling enough to understand what architecture was about, you know.
Yeah, gobbled you up, eh?
Yes.
His careers, yeah.
Exactly. And so for years I didn't play. And then I got very, very active with my professional life, very active. And although there were moments when I was fairly depressed, and my mum actually intuited that I needed a piano back in my life and sent me my grandmother's piano over to Switzerland. And I didn't play it because suddenly I started being very busy. And I would come back to Switzerland, caress the piano, go off on another mission, you know. So really nothing happened with the piano for 30 years, maybe more. I don't know. But the reason it came back was by the time I was 50, just before my 50th birthday, I was beginning to be unwell. I was working really hard, as we often do at that age, and needing to be professional and successful and so on. And my health was suffering. And before I turned 50, I started having a dream. And I had a recurring dream. And it was about knowing somehow. When I woke up, I knew that there was music that was waiting to come through. And I said, I need a piano. I said, really need to have a piano. Anyhow, I detail how that manifested, the piano that did come into my life by the time I turned 50, 3 months later.
Wonderful story.
It's a wonderful story. And there's a real lesson in manifestation in that story, But I didn't know what to do with that piano. It had been 30 years, 32 or 3 years, I hadn't played a piano. Here was this grand piano, and the thing is that I couldn't do anything with it. And I must say it was probably over 2 years. I sat just getting more and more ill, weeping. I couldn't read. My eyesight had gone now. They were full of tears as well. And I couldn't remember any of the repertoire that I had once remembered in my fingers. A little bit of Moonlight, so the things that we had.
Yes.
Nothing. And then there was Ronald's look. Every time he stared at me and said, why have you got this piano? What's this about, I felt devastated for 2 years.
A lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure. And in the meantime, my fibroids just kept growing. And so it got to a point when I knew I had to have a hysterectomy. I tried alternatives, and that was going to happen. And then I thought, well, I want to have my womb removed in my mother tongue.
I love that. That was a great phrase.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine myself being in a French situation, having to negotiate that, navigate that. So that's why I was in Kalk Bay. I was in Kalk Bay and on Norman Road where I lived. Had been for a couple of years. And my grandmother's piano had returned to Kalk Bay, So this is Norman Road, but in fact it's Norman Steps. You can see there's no road here, but that is number 4 Norman Road is where I lived for 20 years. This is where I reconnected with my soul, in a way, through the music. I came here to recover after I had surgery, and while I was recovering, my piano was here in the first room, in my grandmother's piano, and that's where the music started to come through. I lit candles one night. I was very, very, I was grieving. I was very vulnerable. And Ronald had left. He'd come to help set up systems, for my recuperation, and then he'd left. And I went into a very quiet kind of grieving time and went down to my grandmother's piano. Lit candles. It was in the dark, and I remember my eyes were closed, and there was a deep pain there. And my hands were hovering over the keys. And then something took over. It was music that I had not heard before, nothing that was familiar to me, and it just took over, and my hands just went up and down the keys, and my eyes were closed, and at the end I felt held and very loved. I've never used that word before like that, but yes. And the other thing is it had to come together on my grandmother's piano.
And it's the womb that was removed.
See?
The whole mothering thing.
It absolutely, and that was the lineage, because my mother, used to play that piano while I was in her womb. It was my grandmother's piano, my mother used to play it, my great-grandmother bought it.
Sure.
So there's this whole linking back, of the thread on my grandmother's side. And the fact that my mother told me I used to play Chopin when you were, inside me. And that's why I think I had to come back to Kalk Bay to be with that piano, for the music to be able to come through in the way it did. Because it came through to heal me.
And it hasn't only healed you. I mean, you've taken your music to very many places in the world and played all sorts of pianos in all sorts of situations. And there have been circumstances in your memoir where people have been incredibly grieving or sad or very distressed, very disturbed, and you've played the piano and it's helped everything resolve and calm down. So I'm also part of the medical humanities movement, as you know, how writing can heal us, and I'm just wondering about how music heals us. How do you think it works?
Well, that's interesting. I think it's probably got different expressions in that, because I'm sure people who work with sound, vibration and frequency would know all sorts of things about how one can heal through sound healing. And even going for specific organs and things. That's a different, very scientific, technical area, I think. In my case, what I think happens, well, there's a case in the memoir which was very striking. There was this young person, a French Moroccan boy, and I was walking the Camino, and I had stopped at a place, and somehow I stopped for a night, and I saw this interaction between. He was very distressed, very uncomfortable, and his little mother, clearly he was an adopted boy, and she told the other people that he was out for the holidays from the institution. So clearly she wasn't really used to having him, and they were, having a difficult moment, and he'd lost his sweatshirt somewhere on the path, and they'd been retracing their steps, and he was agitated. And I got the feeling that I needed to get him to the piano. He came quietly, holding my hand as I led him into the therapy room and lifted the lid of the piano, seated him next to me, and allowed the first note to fill the small room. He sat hunched forward, rolling slightly backwards and forwards, his head in his hands as the music started to come through to him, for him. It was filled with love. All of a sudden he jumped up and rushed out of the room. I was startled, thinking I'd gone too far. A small doubt. But no. Bertrand reappeared, holding the hand of his small, grey-haired, frazzled mother, bringing her into the space he'd just experienced. And the music continued for both of them. And that was magnificent, just to feel that. So there were moments like that I can remember, and I've tried to recall and write about. I walked for 7 weeks almost across France. I didn't walk on the Spanish side, but I walked 770 kilometers. One of the lessons along the way was I kept hearing Ronald, my husband, his mantra, which he used to throw out wherever he could, whenever it was appropriate. And it was James Thurber's quote, "Look back not in anger, nor forward in fear, but around in awareness." And I kept hearing that as I was walking on the Camino. And that's actually something that I do run my life by now. It has been a wonderful way of staying in the present moment, holding the energy in the moment, which is interesting because with memoir you do look back, but not in anger.
Curiosity.
It's curiosity and compassion. It's been a lovely journey. I've just felt I had to do it. It was one of those compelling things. I'm sure, Dawn, when I think of you, you have to get up at 3 a.m. to write that poem. It lands in you. You have to do it. And
it's also bearing witness to the creative spirit and to your life and the times in which you live. And the more specific you get about your own experience, the paradox is that the more generalizable it can be, the more people can resonate with what you're presenting, or what you're revealing about your own life journey.
I think that's true. And I think there's such variety in the different episodes that I've lived that everybody will find something that resonates with them, you know, or something. I hope that's the case.
Something remarkable about your memoir is the kind of curiosity that you maintain and the willingness to learn and be open. I mean, what does it take to live a life like that? I mean, a lot of people think they know already, or they get scared of any answers that might be coming their way. You know, so there's a guardedness or a fear. I think the fear gets in the way of the curiosity.
I think that's true. I think, well, I love the way, I don't know who said, but fear, F-E-A-R, false evidence appearing real. So I've never felt fear in that way, because that I am curious about what is real. If false evidence appearing real, no, then there's something else. And so I think it's about trust. I've felt protected. I know that I've had a very interesting life on the horizontal axis. Chronologically, it's eventful. I go here, I go there, and have these amazing experiences. But what excites me now, in retrospect, and reading and looking and seeing, is that the vertical axis, those moments when actually the guidance comes through, the intuition, the inner guidance, whatever it is, it opens up a whole nother way of experiencing a particular moment.
Yeah, what a journey, eh? So wonderful to be at this end of one's life and look back, as you say, with compassion and with more insight, and still with curiosity, because it's still unfolding. So Marilyn, do you have anything else to add that we haven't covered? Because I think it's time to crack the champagne.
Let's crack the champagne. But I do, no, you know, Dawn, there's such a sense of gratitude in me for, I must say, I look at my life with such tenderness now.
Oh, that's such a lovely thing to say about your life.
Because, well, I mean, that's why I would love people to be inspired to write about their lives. Because it's like one engages so differently with one's life.
That's true.
And in the writing of it, I look back at my younger self with such compassion.
Exactly. Yeah.
And tenderness, and there's no kind of judgment like, oh, why did you do that? That was a learning curve. It was a building of soul stamina, and enriching, you know. And so I think I'm just hoping that people will somehow feel inspired to examine their lives and give thanks for them. It's so the richness. I mean, I know I have had a very blessed life in many ways, but we all have unique lives, and there's something to share with all of us, you know, each of us. So I would like to have a glass of champagne. It's non-alcoholic, by the way. You said.
It's like that C.S. Lewis quote that I love. You can't go back to the beginning and change what happened, but you can start from where you are and change the ending.
Oh.
And that's what creativity is for.
Yes.
To make you reconsider the patterns, again, the musical patterns that maybe you're stuck in your life, and find a way forward that is more harmonious.
I like that. Yes, absolutely. Now we're going to put this. Wow, well done. Thank you.
It was quite skillful.
Oh, I'd say so. So much to be grateful for. Ah.
To my listening heart.
Oh.
To Marilyn.
To our listening hearts.
That's
May we
right.
hear it.
Yes.
May we all hear our listening hearts.